Okay, here we go. So, welcome, Alex. Welcome, others. We're going to talk about putting together your tenure package. All yours, Alex.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining. Just going to give some suggestions of things that I've learned along the way. Um, so things with P and T, ask 10 people, you get 10 different answers. So just keep that in mind here. But I'm Alex Brand. I'm an associate professor at Virginia Tech. And just to kind of give you a little bit of my background for those who don't know me. Um, so I did my PhD, finished in 2015 from UIUC. From there, I worked at NIST as a postdoc, and then immediately after the postdoc, I came to Virginia Tech. And so 2018 to 2025, I was an assistant professor, and I just went through this whole process. So hopefully, it's still fresh in my mind, and maybe there's some thoughts I can pass on to you. But I was promoted to associate professor just this past August. Um, So some of the suggestions I'm going to give to you today, incidentally, were suggestions that were given to me at a meeting just a few months ago. So none of this was not some of this was in my actual dossier that I'm going to talk about today, but some of it is also great suggestions that I wish someone had told me about to put in my dossier before I submitted it. Uh, Things you learn along the way. Um, so some things I do suggest, right, is definitely be as detailed as possible. I'll give some examples about that and what I mean by this, um, and give quantitative data when available, right? So things like teaching scores, you actually have numbers, put that down. We'll see some of that. Um, Front and center, right, at the beginning of your dossier, you want to highlight the most impactful results, right? Awards you've won. If you have an NSF career, right, you want to put that like front and center to really impress people. You do, most institutions have a template that you have to follow. I don't know that all institutions do. So you kind of have to do this within reason of where you can put this information, but you need to talk about yourself, right, and convince people that, this is a good person that needs to be promoted. This is the one that I only recently was given the advice. This is what I was talking about. Use charts and figures. No one had recommended this to me before. And I'll show you why this is useful in the coming slides. Be detailed. I kind of already mentioned that. I'll tell you what I mean by this with an example in a few slides. You just have to remember that not everyone looking at your P&T package knows what the top journals are in your field, right? So you have to kind of give them some of that information. All right. That's exactly what I was talking about here. There's probably going to be a department P&T committee, then the college, then the university level. Remember that people are reviewing your dossier that are not, cement chemists, that are not concrete engineers, right? So this is why you need to provide these details for those types of reviewers. People that are writing the letter for you, the letter of recommendation for your P&T, they should hopefully know a lot of stuff, right? They should hopefully know the journals that are good and all of that. But it's everyone else that doesn't know it. That's what I'm saying. Be detailed, give them that information. This is some advice someone told me as I was going up through the P&T process. What you want the P&T committee to do is take a look at your dossier, spend only a little bit of time on it, and basically say, yep, that looks like an associate professor, case closed, let's promote them, right? So that's where you want to make it as easy for them to see that you are a qualified candidate that should be promoted, right? So if they can just say it's an open and shut case, good, move on, right? You don't want them squabbling over whether or not you deserve to go up, right? That's not a good thing. Um, so this is things like charts and figures that I was talking about. Visuals, right? People can see that, oh, look at how many students they've had, right? They're continuing to have more and more students. This is just kind of like a cumulative chart of the graduate students I've had, right? And I even separated out, we have a master's thesis here, and then we also have something like a project report. It's more or less like a mini thesis, a one semester thesis. So I separated those out, but it's a good visual because now you can see there's an actual trajectory, right? The number of students you have is increasing. That's what they want to see, right? So that's where you have these visuals that helps them understand, like, hey, this is a good candidate. They should be promoted. Same thing with papers. This is one I never thought to do. And again, someone told me this just a few months ago. I wish I would have put this in my original dossier when I was going up. But here's showing you journal articles, conference proceedings, citations, right? You can download these figures already off of Scopus, right? I instead decided to download the data and sort of process it myself. But if you just go to Scopus to your profile, there's already charts like this generated for you automatically by Scopus. So put this type of information in your dossier. Show people what your H-index is, right? Talk about it, right? You want to convince them that, look, you can see this trajectory again. Look, number of citations is continuing to increase. This is a good candidate. We want to keep this person. Let's promote them, right? Give them these visuals so that they can see this type of information. Add comparative metrics. This is actually a requirement for our college P&T. I don't know if other institutions do this, but we write down our teaching effectiveness scores from student scores at the end of the semester, and they want us to compare it to the department and the college. So if you can compare this and people can visibly see like, whoa, the candidate's rating is better than the department mean, that's a good thing, right? This is probably another one that you could, plot a chart, I guess. Especially if numbers are changing, if you're improving over time. But this is just a quick snapshot from part of the table that I have. But if you can add these sort of quantitative metrics, again, it's a very good comparison to have. The other thing, most people do something like this. Some people will also color code, but you want to make it clear who's contributing to the papers you're writing, right? Is it a master's student, postdoc, PhD student? You can see I have a long list here because I'm also separating out postdocs, I'm separating out visiting scholars, I'm separating out students that will come work with me for, let's say, a semester and then decide to do a PhD with someone else. I put them on there too, right? Because I technically advised them for a semester. We got a paper out of it, right? Make it clear who these students are, right? And again, some people will do different visuals for this. I've seen people color code. I like this format, but um, people have other ways of doing this. And this was where we're also saying provide details, right? So, what was your contribution to the paper, right? Were you the PI? Did you acquire the funding? What did you contribute to writing it? What's the impact factor of the journal? The number of citations? Citations is another one someone recommended me to start updating. That one's a real pain because then every time you resubmit your dossier for review, you have to update the number of citations for that paper. So that can get a bit tedious, but that could be something good to include. Also provide the details here. I have some of the journals with more information saying like, this is the top journal in this field. I don't have that in this example here, but you can put in details like that as well. Um, just again, you're trying to show them that you had an impactful work here, right? This is work from funding that you acquired, right? This is your student is the one that's the first author. It's a PhD student, right? You want to show this type of detail to again convince people that um, you're having an impactful career. So that's just kind of a whole bunch of quick snapshot suggestions. I know other people have other thoughts, but just a few more things to think about. Definitely continuously update the dossier. When you get a new paper published, update your dossier, right? Otherwise, you're going to get to, if you have a yearly review, right, and you're waiting until the last minute, you're probably going to forget something, right? You're going to forget to include a class, or you're going to misplace the data from the class, or you're going to forget to add a paper that you published. My suggestion is continuously update it. If you wait till the last minute, you're going to miss some stuff. I don't know what everyone's institutions do. My department, there is a yearly P&T review of your dossier, and then there's a big review at year 3. So if you don't have that, if you only just have, let's say, one big review after 3 years, I would suggest sending your dossier out to colleagues. Those would be people at your own institution. Most people on this call would probably also be happy to review it, right? Send it to me. I'd be happy to give you some suggestions. Um, get that feedback. It's useful. You're probably going to have requirements for formatting, something you have to keep in mind. I mean, I submitted my dossier August last year, and they sent it back to me a month later saying, "Oh, you forgot to do this format, you forgot to do this and this." It's very tedious. There's really minute details sometimes that you just, oh, I forgot to add a section header here, or just pay attention to that. Last slide is more not just dossiers, but this is just my suggestions for people that are assistant, right, and are working on this whole P&T process. What should you be focused on? And this is another thing, ask 10 people, you get 10 different answers, but just some things I recommend. Number one, get your face out there. When I first started, was advice from a colleague. She's a National Academies member. She's a University Distinguished Professor. So I trusted her advice, right? And she said, look, get out there, get your face out there, uh, get people to see your research, get people to know your name, put a face to the name, because you never know who's going to be reviewing your NSF career proposal, who's going to be contacted by your department to write a P&T letter. This person already knows you, that might help, right? So definitely get out there and make sure people know who you are. All right. You need to publish, right? I'm sure everyone knows that. I strongly encourage quality more important than quantity, right? Some institutions might tell you have to publish X number of papers, so you might have to kind of juggle that, but I'd much rather have a, 50-page manuscript that is very detailed and there's a lot of data rather than splitting it up, right? If it doesn't make sense to do so, right? Most institutions recommend graduating at least one PhD student. Some institutions will have that as a written rule. Here in my department, it's kind of like an unwritten rule. Um, but usually if you target one, you're in good shape. More is better, right? The P&T committee will always tell you like, oh, you graduated a student, great, graduate more. Oh, you published a few papers this year, great, publish some more. You brought in money, great, bring in more. They're always going to ask for more. But you're right, what is the bare minimum you do have to meet? Continue using tenure clock extensions if you have them. Um, I know some institutions, if you take it, you have to use it. At my institution, I didn't have to use all of the extensions I received. Um, but I mean, like we got an extension for COVID because, the lab was shut down for so many months, right? So I definitely needed an extension from that. I had extensions from having kids. That was very helpful because productivity is a little bit low when you have a newborn at home. I'm sure people can know for experience. So consider these tenure clock extensions. I know people that say they don't want to use them. They're afraid it's going to look bad. In my experience, it didn't at all. Always talk with people at your institution and elsewhere. You never know when there's a unique collaboration opportunity. Right? I've talked with people in like biological sciences. Uh, I know nothing about biology. They know nothing about concrete, but we had an idea. We ended up not working on it, but you never know when there's an interesting idea that's going to pop up. And last thing is mentors are good. My department only recently developed a formal mentorship program. So as I was an assistant professor, I did not have a formal mentor in the department. So I kind of had to seek out recommendations and stuff like that from other people. But I would recommend that that's also very useful. And I know there's a lot of people on this call that would also be happy to provide any commentary and recommendations as well. That's all I have for now. I'll be happy to answer questions when we get to Q&A. But yeah, I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much, Alex. I think that was absolutely fantastic, and I think you covered a lot of ground there. So thank you. Nishant, you're up next.
Okay, all
Maybe
right. Thanks for
stop sharing, Alex. Yeah.
Yeah, indeed, Alex, that was a really nice presentation. I think there's a lot of points in there that are very, very good. Okay, can one of you confirm you can see my full screen here?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So I put together a bunch of slides here, and many people ask me this question: why I always wear a tie? So I thought I can tie it in with the Illinois experience. So anyway, I think the next few slides will just talk about some of the things I did as I prepare the tenure package. And I will put these slides on the team so you'll have access to them. I think to start a little bit on the lighter note, sometimes I was in this kind of situation. I think many of you may have been when, your spouse is thinking, well, I bet he's thinking about other women, but thinking, what shall I put in my tenure package? I don't want to miss anything, right? You want to make sure it's as comprehensive as possible, but you also have page limits, and you also want to make sure the reviewers can see the important things. So one of the key things to consider here is that most of the universities have official guidelines, and there are some things in the guidelines where you can read between the lines. So for us, the provost has total 27 communications, which are official guidelines focused on assisting units in recruiting, evaluating, and retaining personnel. So if you go to online, you can find these online. There's 27 of them. If you look at communication number 9, which is the most, this is the most important, relevant for today's topic. And in this one, there's an important part of it's a very long communication, but there's one which is italicized. So if you read this, it's kind of very interesting. It says, because tenure has consequences of long life and great magnitude, it should be avoided only when the best interest of the University of Illinois is clearly served. This is the overriding criterion. So the bold is my emphasis, but the italics is theirs. So that means at the end of the day, it's a very subjective decision. What the university decides, what is best for them, it overrides every other criteria. Something to keep in mind. Okay, so then there are three things. There is the research statement, teaching statement, the service statement, which form part of the dossier that we submit, along with what we call a biodata, which basically contains a detailed list of all our publications, conferences, grants, which goes along with these three statements. But the statements are your part of a narrative where you can explain what you have done over the past 5 years. On that timing also, I should clarify, I started my tenure track journey in 2018, and I was submitted the package in 2024. And 2025, this year is when I got the official tenure in the summer. In 2018, when I started, I did have a small hiccup in getting my J1 waiver. So I had my H1B was slightly delayed. So I joined the university 3 months late, and that pushed my clock, 1 year forward. Initially, I was a bit unhappy when this happened because I basically lose 1 year. I should have gone up in 2024. But in retrospect, I think having that also additional year was helpful in getting your first students in, getting them started. Because when you start the first year, you usually don't have students. So those are some things you can keep in mind. And then, of course, you can always talk to the department to get some of these extensions and so on. So in my case, I did not get it because it was already done due to this visa issue. So for the research statement, I think there's different ways to frame it. But what I did was I just put 3 key thrusts in it. And I think this is something I would recommend when you put your research statement. And you can already start thinking about it, is what will be key things that you will say you'll make a story about. So for me, I was passionate about these 3 things, and I could divide my research and publication into these 3 categories. So that's what I did. And then there was a requirement to have at least 5 publications. Actually, in the official, it's only maybe 2, but I think I was recommended to have at least 5 attached to the package. So we are recommended to choose the ones where the students are the first authors, and you pick the ones which you think are the most impactful. Then, of course, you reference cite all the publications, and you make sure you mark the ones which are the students with an asterisk. And then you also, I mentioned the total funding raised from a diverse variety of sources to kind of strengthen the strength of the package. Yeah, so I was kind of very passionate about some of the Raman imaging work that we did early on. This was the first paper, one of the first paper from my group. So that was one of the 5 publications. I think the choice of those publications, you need to drive balance between what you really are passionate about and what you think the reviewers also will see the impact. In terms of teaching statement, again, I did it divided in this way. I did 2 approaches. One was kind of learning by doing, got a lot of kind of lab experiments. So in one of the courses, we teach a course on cement chemistry. So I introduced a lot of lab parts to it. We start making B-light in the lab. So I made an exercise called Make Your Own B-light. And we also took them to kind of tour to a cement plant. So this made the course a bit more hands-on and with experiments. And that was one thing I kind of said very strongly in the statement. The other thing I implemented was some of the technological things, such as bringing in eye clickers and doing some of the virtual reality-based interventions. So we developed this little game we call Crystal Vision to help students help with the crystallography. And we actually got some money for this. And we were also able to actually publish a paper on this, which became a key part of the teaching statement. And of course, you mentioned your teaching evaluations and as well as any money raised for this effort. So that was what I did for the teaching. For the service, I would say this is kind of the statement which is number 3 on the list. It's not as important as research or teaching, but still it's very important that you cover the service done at different levels. So I consider all the different organizations. I'm part of ACI, ACERS, RILUM, ASTM, and so on, and ASC, and the department committees, and any kind of media engagement that I did was the service to broader community. So I think it's good to kind of show those things, at 3 different levels. One thing I would say is that one good advice I did get from the P&T committee early on, when I started was I thought, a few conferences, 1 or 2 or 3 conferences per year is good. That was kind of my grad student or postdoc mentality. But really, I was encouraged, you really need to travel more, because when you start doing a little bit more travel, you really learn a lot of things, and especially going to conferences outside your comfort zone is where you will really make new connections. So I would really suggest you go to these conferences as much as you can handle, and chat with other colleagues, both academics as well as industry members, and you will learn a lot. So to sum it up, I think in big picture, in terms of, if you look at again that guideline, there's a couple of things that are very important to consider in mind. They do admit that the university is committed to excellence in all 3 categories, but it's rare for an individual case to achieve equal excellence in all 3 domains, right? So then they go on to say that the primary basis for promotion tenure will be research and teaching, with consideration also given to service, public engagement, and other activities. So what I was told initially when I started, right, it's like these are the 3 legs: research, teaching, and service. So they may not be equal, but you have to keep in mind which one are very critical. And in the end, this is the sentence that is in that communication. Promotion tenure is generally awarded if there's evidence of excellent research accomplishments and a strong record of teaching, service, and public engagement. So this is something you need to consider. Yeah, in terms of letter writers, I think they say you have to have at least 5 letters. I think in my case, I remember they said somewhere between 6 to 8 letters were solicited, and they were all received. So I think this is very standard, this kind of number that is used at Illinois. I think on top of that, I think having this kind of formal feedback every year from the P&T is very important. The things that they tell you in a written form is very important to consider. So you should really think about it. If there's something which is confusing and you don't understand, it's worth having that conversation with them or the department head to understand what they're seeing. Because sometimes they say a single line, but there's a lot of meaning behind those lines, and you need to understand that. And then having monthly informal meetings with the mentors, I personally found very helpful. For example, one of my mentors is John Popovics, and he was absolutely phenomenal in kind of guiding me through things. He helped me even ask questions that I'd never thought I should ask, right? So I think having good mentors and first identifying them and then getting their help is very, very important. So don't be alone in this journey, because then it gets very stressful. Yeah, and then finally, I think I would say very much stress your students are a key part of your tenure journey, right? Having your students understand what you're going through and forming that part of as a team, so saying that you don't get tenure as yourself, you and your group get tenure together. So I think having your students on board, understanding through that journey is very important. So I was been very lucky to do that. So that's something, keep in mind. And I think there is this informal requirement having your one student graduated, but I think what they're really looking for is a pipeline of students. There's a steady progression as you go forward in your career. Yeah, so that's all I have for you all. I'm happy to take any questions later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nishant. Outstanding as always. Miriam?
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Perfect.
Yes.
So Yeah, let me just share screen very quick. Okay, so well, I will just give some of the tips that I learned from my experience. Many of the things were already mentioned, so I will just try to say the things that are a little bit different, or even though some of them will be kind of on the same lines. So first of all, I'm Mirian Velay-Lizancos, an associate professor in civil engineering and Bowen Scholar of Excellence at Purdue University, and I just got tenure recently this summer, so I kind of have it fresh too. So that's why I think it's a good moment to share with others. So the first thing is the critical points. And before you even start to write your package, it's very important you try to learn what is expected to get tenure in your institutions. That's the most important part, but also just check what is expected in other institutions. Of course, you need to know what is expected in your institutions because you need to pass the votes, right? Then from a practical point of view, you really need to know on that one. But then you also need to know what other institutions expect because you will need external letters. So that's also an important point there that you might think, okay, this is my institution, I just care about that, but it is important to know a little bit more, to have a broader perspective and to present what you have done in a way that you will get good letters. So that's just some critical points before starting. Now, the package will have at least what I have here at Purdue will be just three main parts. One is related to research, another one related to teaching and mentoring, and the final one related to service. There are other things like visibility, awards, things like that that are important, but they are kind of falling into these categories anyway. Um, so let's start with research, right? What we need to make sure we get a good package. Well, we need the outputs, right? We need good papers. Again, quality is much more important than quantity, but this is important to have papers, conference, patents, and students graduated. Now, if you have 100 papers, chances are people will start to think like, oh, how you publish 100 papers in 1 year? That would be not a good way to go unless you are, extremely productive. Now, so if you have only one paper, even if it's an amazing paper, most likely people will start to think about, is this person really will be capable to keep going after this if it took 5 years in one paper? I mean, if it's a Nobel Prize paper, I think everyone would be happy anyway. But you have to have a balance. There's no a number, there's no bean counting usually, at least not in my institution, but it should be some balance. No one, no 100. That will be a thing. Then in terms of students graduated, that's a very important part. And again, it's quality. It's not just having a student graduated without papers. It will raise some questions. While students graduated with a good number of papers and with some recognitions, then it will be much more positive than just get the student graduated because I need to check a box. So checking the box alone, it will not be in many cases enough. Then again, you don't need to only to have them, but also make sure it's shown in a way that people understand your contribution. And this is something that was mentioned before. So it's good you find a code or some things to say, okay, these were my grad students, this is me, and I am corresponding author. That will mean that you really contributed and this is coming from your research group. It's also good you have some collaboration so that you also see that not every paper is like that, but you should have a good number of good papers that you show they are coming from you, so then the committee will understand, yeah, this person will have a long uh, life on this area of research. Now, it's not only about the outputs, you need to have inputs. They will not tell you a number again, but it is very important to have funding from different sources, especially right now. It's good to show that you have a portfolio that is resilient, that if suddenly one agency will shut down, you still have other ones. So it is important. It is very difficult in the sense that getting funding is not an easy thing. So it's very important to start early on. So then you will have plenty of time to get some rejections and then suddenly some acceptance and then more acceptance. So that's an important part also on the research sides, and then the impact and the novelty. Now, you might have a lot of papers, but if you're not able to articulate why they are novel and what is the impact, that will be feeling a little bit short. So it is very important and it takes time. And in fact, when I was preparing my package, that was a very important thing that I had to stop and sit and write about that. And that really helped me a lot. At the beginning, some colleagues were like, oh, this is a waste of time. We just need to rewrite this in a way that people understand how novel it is or how impactful it is. But it's very important because then when you go to conference, when you go to, invite their seminar, you have that one already in your brain, articulated in the right way. So you not only did the great work that you did, but also you know how to explain it in plain words. So that part is very important, and it will help you later to also to apply for awards, other stuff like that. So working on that part of your package is very, very important, and it will make the reviewers' life much easier. Reviewers, I mean the committees, but also then the letter writers. So having something highlight, something with a bold, just try to make it in a way that people will find what they are trying to look for. So then it's not only about research, of course, you have to go and also write about your teaching and your mentoring. For teaching, I think it's very important if you have the chance to teach both graduate and undergraduate courses, because that could be also, if you don't do that, that could be an excuse to say, just wait a little bit more because you still didn't do this. So this is something that's important. And I think it's also important to learn, different styles of teaching, different ways. Undergraduate courses, I think they are very interesting, especially large undergraduate courses, but graduate courses also will help you to even establish a new graduate course, learn even about a topic, just work on that and go and just do something that is a lot of fun, just to be honest. Now, just do it once and do it right. So then when you have to teach it again, it's perfect and it will not take much of your time because you did it the first time the right way. So what I would say in the teaching, just try to get a good developed courses that then they will just be very easy for you to teach and to teach it in the right way. Now, teaching evaluations are important. Just make sure you get the data and also quotes if possible. For us, they give, the students, in addition to the points, let's say, they have some notes. So having some quotes about what they say, I think it's also an important thing that it could help to illustrate how you are doing your teaching. Then mentoring graduate and undergraduate students. I think that's kind of the core of everything. Without graduate and undergraduate students doing research, you will not have the output, you will not have the impact, you will not have anything. So that's a very important part, and the sooner you start, the better. But you really need to make a good decision. So try to find a good student, try to take your time, do not just rush, and whenever you have it, don't spoil it. Just make sure the student keeps going in the right direction. And then write about it, write about their awards, their achievements. This is showing also how your mentoring was effective, right? So I think that's another part that is important in the package. And then the service, people will tell you research is the most important, then teaching, mentoring, and finally service. Now, I see service not as a requirement, but as an opportunity. When you go to conference, when you go and volunteer for a committee, you are doing networking and you are learning a lot. You are learning from others. You are learning about how things work. So I really think service is a very, very important part because it will also help you to get to know people and then also to get other people to know you. So that's an important part that I think we should not overlook. It's just an opportunity. It's not just a requirement. I will say it's an opportunity. Same thing with committees in the school. At the beginning, I hear from many, I just tried not to have any committee. But to be honest, it's a way also to learn and to know your colleagues. So that's also important because If they know you, they might spend more time reading your package and not just skimming around and just voting whatever thing. So it's very important you kind of get the opportunities to pitch what you are doing, to explain what you are doing, so then they will be interested and they will spend more time on reviewing that. Now, this is kind of the package itself, but I will say the tips that I wanted to mention are: first, start writing your package right away from the beginning and keep track of everything. If not, you will forget. When you end up with your full package, you will say, like, oh my God, how many things I did. I mean, if I didn't keep track, it would be impossible to remember all of these things. So it's very important you have a document, very accessible every time, and every time you do something, just write it there. Articulate your impact. That's a very important part, and the novelty of your research. Ask your colleagues to review it, but do it when it's perfect for you. Do not try to ask people to do your job, right? So you bring something that is perfect for you, and then your colleagues will take the time to review it and give the feedback. If you go with a very bad draft, it's just speaking bad about you. So, you know, that person maybe will voting on your case. You don't want to for this person to see a bad version of it. So just do it perfect first, or as perfect as possible. And be meticulous with the format. This is, you know, this package is just summarizing everything you have done. So it has to be perfect. Perfect in all senses, including format. You want, this is also speaking on how meticulous you are. So you have to make it in a way that is kind of clear and is correct. And then apply to awards, try to get invited lectures, go to committees, and keep track. Again, keep track of all of it, because if you don't keep track, you will forget. I promise I forget a lot, even though I am trying to keep a track of everything I am doing. So just to finalize, as I said, external letters are very important. So you need to go out and make sure people understand what you are doing, and they might like it, and then they might follow that, and then they maybe spend the time to write a letter on that. So go to conference committees, any invited lecture, just go there. That will be also instrumental. And if you are just starting, the most crucial decision is the selection of your first students. That will affect all the parts of your package. Your first students will be everywhere there. So try to make the best decision, and that's kind of all. And at the end of the day, just do whatever makes sense for you and for the career you want. I think that's the most important thing. You have to ask for advice, but then you should take whatever you think it makes sense for you and for who you want to be. With that, if you want to contact me, here's just a QR code, and I hope I'm on time.
Thank you very much, Miriam. Mehdi, all yours now.
Hey everyone, let me share my screen. I think we are almost out of time, so I'll try to be quick and so we have enough time for that question. Okay, my name is Mehdi Khanzadeh. I'm a associate professor at Temple. I got my tenure just last summer in July. I started here at 2019, basically right before COVID. So as others covered the university or college guidelines, so it's important to get familiar with these guidelines. So I don't know how many of the previous speakers, they have a faculty union. We do have a faculty union that's kind of make a little bit difference. So the policies, the guidelines is a little clear what the university wants. So as far as what are the criteria, the teaching, they require outstanding performance, research as well, but the service, that's not the case. So based on the basically union agreement, service is not primary evaluation criteria for tenure in our university. As far as the teaching goes, these are the basically some of the ways you can present your teaching, which I listed here. I'm sure you're familiar with most of them. So it's again, as the rest of the speaker covered, it's better to start compiling this data. So when you're ready to submit your package, you have all of them ready. One thing I highlighted here, we have a senior design project. This is kind of important for our department, especially in the our department committee. So they prefer to have one team mentored by you or advised by you per year. So that's something to consider. So to make sure you understand those criteria in the department level. So if that's a requirement, you have a plan for that. As far as the research goes, these are the requirements for the research, being independent, showing the significance, and again, having that over the time, showing the promise and the viable funding progress. So these are the evidence you can show here. Again, your publications in a different forms, the external funding, internal funding, establishing a lab, and also the national, international conferences and meetings, so attending those. And external evaluation, again, I highlighted the previous speakers mentioned, try to put yourself out there so people knows you, your research, so when they provide the letter, you get a good feedback from them. Understanding the timeline, at the right, I put the timeline for our university. So you have to basically, at the beginning of the April, you have to send a letter of intent to dean that you are going to for a tenure. So, and then the remaining basically deadlines when you have to submit your package and the review process for each of those committees. So when you should expect it feedback from the different committees. So that's going to give you an idea what is the timeline. If you're going early for PNT, my suggestion is talk to your chair, talk to your dean, the other faculty that you think they're going to be in your PNT committee to make sure kind of you have the agreement between them that you are ready to go before you send out your letter of intent. The required docs are in our university, about 17 or 18 required documents. The personal statement is optional, but obviously everyone submits that. So the CV, teaching assignment, so all of this, or some of them have a form, specific form that you basically fill your courses, how many students were there, graduate, undergraduate. As Alex mentioned, ours also included like that evaluation for each of them, and what is your average versus the department average and the university average. The other thing they also important is the peer evaluation we have. So you invite your basically other faculty from your department or outside department to evaluate your teaching, so you can submit those with your package. The other thing is the teaching portfolio. This wasn't a requirement previously when I submitted, but this year they made the requirement, so you have to have a teaching portfolio. So you have to work with the different centers in the university to make sure you prepare that if that's the requirement. Again, these are the other part of the again documents that are required. One of them I'm gonna later on focus is indicators of the impact of the candidate's work. This is where you can basically put all of those charts that Alex was mentioning or the other speaker were discussing how you can present your impact. So that's where I try to basically bring the citation report, the student successes, and all the other indicators from my activities during the at Temple. Some just a quick kind of recommendation. When you prepare your CV, I try to be clear and present my information in a way that it's easy for committee to understand. So these are some, examples I put here. So I made it clear with the temple affiliation how many papers I published, how many of them are under review, and as the other speaker mentioned, which one with your students, and we had a separate document. In that document, we provided that details that Alex mentioned about your role in that paper, the impact factor of that journal, and all the, again, information related to that paper. And also the grants I mentioned with the temple application, what is the total number, if you have industry cost share and all those. So make sure it's clear, since you started at that university, what was your contribution and what is the total numbers and how the trajectory look like. This is the indicator I mentioned previously, that folder. So these are some of the items I included. I provided the impact factor of the journals that I published in. I provided the citation record. I provided some reference letter from advisory committee of my projects. So I think that's important, shows them that your project impactful for the industry. This is in addition to external letters. This is something I myself provide here. National, international awards, fellowship, student success, establishing lab. Basically, I explained there that I started from scratch. So, and what is the basically condition of lab at that moment when I'm submitting. And then the other thing I submitted is a success rate in obtaining grant. So I showed them that I have a high success rate in the obtaining grant. So that's something also to focus and kind of shows the impact. And anything else that you feel it can show the, again, impact of your research and your teaching. That's it. I think we can move to the question and answers.
Thank you very much, Mehdi. Let me stop the recording now.